Before this week's new episode, we wanted to take a moment to tell you about another podcast we highly recommend. Our friend Pam Uzel runs the Art Heals All Wounds podcast. Pam and her guests look at so many wonderful stories of how art can change the world for the better and the journeys that led to that change. Of course, there's a good chance there's a crossover with tech every now and then. Make sure you stay tuned to the end of this episode to hear Pam's trailer for her wonderful show.
Well, hi everyone, and welcome back to Crosswires. It's James here, and this week we're going to be talking about a subject that maybe doesn't come up often enough in tech or on podcasts. We're going to be talking about how older people can benefit from and how they might struggle with technology and why technology can be both a blessing and a curse to elderly people. My guest this week is someone who knows a lot about how looking after older people, their needs, and what makes maybe technology more important and more, shall we say, a more complicated proposition for the older person. Please welcome Nancy from the Eldercare Success podcast.
Hello there. Thank you so much for having me as a guest, James. It's a pleasure to be here with you and all of your guests.
My absolute pleasure, and thank you so much. And this is, again, I say this so many times on the show, this is an example of where the podcast community is so awesome, because we met through Indie Pod Summit, literally on, what was it, effectively podcast speed dating.
Who knew that we could do this across the pond?
It's fantastic. I love the technology. And of course, as always, a shout out to Squadcast for making the recording possible, because we literally wouldn't be able to do this without them. So thank you very much, Squadcast. So Nancy, before we get into today's topic, would you like to tell the lovely listeners a little bit more about yourself, maybe your background and how you got into doing an eldercare podcast?
Sure. I had another podcast called Boardroom's Best, which I don't record on anymore, but I have a background in working with corporate governance, public company CEOs, boards of directors, and have been in the corporate world and then on my own as an entrepreneur and business owner for 30 odd years. My dad was an entrepreneur as well in the manufacturing space, but as time passed, my parents always talked to me about what would happen as they age and would I be capable to take over their finances and watch things and manage and make sure that they were fine. And we had these conversations over the course of our lives. But when push came to shove and reality happened, there were some signs that I was a little concerned about in decisions that they were making, smart, talented people. But, statistics say that after the age of 65, we become more trusting. And I don't know. I mean, it's going to happen to me too. So we'll see what happens. Maybe I'll be the crotchety old lady who says, like hell. But anyway, there are some decisions that were not necessarily what I considered good. They had a bad financial advisor whom my dad loved as a friend. And I said, Dad, he's not your friend. He's a vendor, he's a service provider. There's a difference between that. And there was financial abuse that was going on by the financial advisor. There was some medical challenges that my mom was going through. And, life got more complicated. So I stepped in as their POA, official POA, and started to really, put my feet to the ground and ask serious questions, because now I was the official fiduciary. And I was concerned about my parents coming close to the end of their life and becoming destitute, especially after working so hard to create a life for themselves and my sister and myself as we were kids. They had gone into a care facility, and that cost ended up escalating to $30,000 a month here in the States. Not, I hate to say it, not unusual, because most people think that it's a lot lower than that. It's fine if you're getting nothing but 3 meals a day and a room. But quite frankly, you can do that for a lot less and still get a lovely place to live. But with that, I started adding up the numbers and got rid of the financial advisor, brought in my financial advisor. But I told my dad, look at, $30,000 a month, you're SOL, you're going to be out of money in like X number of years. What do you want to do? And Dad panicked and said, let's leave this place now. Can't do that. So, long story short, we found a new place, ended up moving them several times, buying a new house, and hired my own aides, 6 aides that I ran like a small business. So I called it Mom and Dad Inc. But we did a right sizing or rescaling and rebuilding of Mom and Dad Inc. so that they would not become financially destitute and they were getting good quality care. $200,000 in savings later, and it took us, me and my financial advisor, and firing the attorney and hiring new attorneys. It really took on right sizing, I'll call it, or rewriting their financial strength, almost 3 years of unraveling mess. There were days that I was on the phone with the financial team, sometimes twice a day in the beginning, and it was hard. But that said, if I didn't understand business myself and know how to do it, it would be more difficult. And I took the emotion out of it as much as possible. But my joke is that I was, mad as hell. I wasn't going to take it anymore for myself or my parents. And people started to ask, what are you doing, Nancy? Like, how do you do? You're in Connecticut and they're in Florida, and things are starting to turn around for them. Like, what's your secret sauce? And part of it is being diligent. The other part is constantly asking questions. The third part is not being 65 and not trusting anybody. Well, maybe not everybody, but there's got to be some level of trust. But the old trust and verify is, and my background in research also, drove me down. You have to be a good researcher to work with public company boards. So I figured, well, let's see what happens, and made a couple of twists and turns and started a podcast called Eldercare Success, which is now in the top 5% of most favorite shows worldwide. So I'm pretty pleased with that one.
That's awesome. And it's such a great way to help others because, and I think it is one of the things I love about podcasts. There is now literally a podcast for almost everything. It's like that old joke, there's an app for that. Well, now there's a podcast
There's a podcast for that. Yeah. And some are really good and some are boring as hell.
Oh, you've listened to our show then?
No. I try to make ours entertaining as well because caregiving can be kind of a depressing if you're going through it, and it's hard.
It really is.
I've gone through a lot of things. In fact, I just recorded a short on like what happens when you're in one of those, pissy, crappy moods. It impacts everybody. Here's how to get out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, my mum and my uncle are going through a load of stuff. They're dealing with, as I've said many times, many people know we lost my granddad back in September of last year. And, they're now dealing with the house sale because Nana is in a dementia care home. So we have to sell the house to afford her care. Thankfully, her care bill is not that much. You're
in a whole different healthcare system versus the States. The majority of care homes, if somebody's going into a care home, are not medical facilities and they're private pay. And people don't understand that they're not a medical facility. The only thing's a medical facility is a nursing home or a rehab, and they have to be classified. And those ones are actually overseen by laws and regulations by each state. But the rest of them, continued care, independent, assisted, memory care, are not classified as medical facilities. So they don't have the oversight that a true medical institution does.
That's very interesting because, the care homes here are overseen by the same sort of, I think if you call it the CQC, the Quality Care Commission, they're all overseen, so they're all rated, and there's a lot of regulation here, which is a good thing. I will say, in praise of the care home that my nana's in, and I don't mind naming it, it's called Springfield Manor Gardens. It's in Fulwood, Preston. It is incredible. The staff there are wonderful. Every time I've had dealings with them, they have been just fantastic. But let's start with something, because you mentioned POE. Now, POA, I didn't say POE because I'm such a networking in now. POA, for those who don't know, is power of attorney. And that gives you, and it will be different across different countries, but it means that you effectively take usually financial control. There are different countries have different laws around this, but there are different types of POA, but typically a POA is in place when someone is not able to make financial decisions or other decisions on their own behalf. And that's a very, I want to say, scary and must be disheartening thing to have to take out against, for a relative.
It's a pretty heady title. Yeah. It takes a lot of responsibility to, both morally, ethically, and emotionally to do that.
Because you talked about financial abuse, and unfortunately, there have been cases, where POAs have been the financial abusers. It is, as you said, it's a huge ethical responsibility. It's one of the things we really value on the show is strong ethics and looking at everything from that point of view. But before we get into some of the technology, one of the things we just quickly, and I know we talked about this when we first did our initial call, but I thought we'd sort of bring the juicy topic to the forefront, is those bad financial decisions, those decisions that could wipe out your savings. And I guess there's two things we want to cover here: being scammed and what you described as aggressive marketing. Let's start with the aggressive marketing, because that one's not really illegal. That's you can do that. It's not
as creative as you want to be. Go for it, guys. It's
So what are we talking about there? Can you give us a bit of what's your take on this? What do we mean by these aggressive ads? What sort of things are we talking about?
So, aggressive ads can be anything from television to the mailers that you get in the print to the calls on telephone calls. I mean, those are the simplest form of aggressive marketing, I'll call it. And in some cases, scare tactics are used, or aspirational tactics. You are going to be younger, jump higher, run faster, more virile, again, whatever that is for you. And, we joked earlier before the recording about, the aging actors getting on there saying, well, it's so great that I'm using it too. You don't necessarily always know that, and it's really hard to read the fine print on a 15-second commercial at the bottom of the screen that may be small unless it's one of those billboard televisions that are, 90 inches wide. And then, unless you freeze frame, it's hard to catch it. And then the subscription. Oh, well, it's free to start. You get on the phone with somebody and yeah, that first month is free, but then it starts in a rapid succession of payments that you didn't expect, and then try to get out of it. Including now, we're also going back to the care facilities and other facilities that are sending mailers out. I had to laugh because we're getting mailers down where we are from. We moved from up north in Connecticut down to Florida 2 years ago, just after my mom passed. And I got a mailer from a care, I'll put it in quotes, care facility that is no longer calling themselves a care facility, but a concierge living facility.
Oh, gosh.
And I thought, ooh, that's interesting. So you're playing to my ego of what I want to aspire to, whether I can afford it or not. And now I get the concierge care and the doorman and everything else that, my neighbor can afford, but maybe I can't afford. And they don't tell you up front exactly how the costs go. And most people don't even understand how to read a contract or ask questions before a parent signs or they sign those documents. And then who's liable for them if you sign them for a parent? That's a whole nother thing. So, I consult with people on how to go over that and how to really understand what it is they're signing. And an attorney will tell you what's in the contract. They won't help you make the decision or give you the right questions to ask so that you can make a sound decision for yourself or somebody that you love. That's not their job.
No, they're just there to tell you, look, yeah, this is legal, this isn't legal, or this term is favorable or not favorable. They're not getting paid to help you make the decision. They're getting paid to basically to read through the contract.
Read the contract, cross out certain things and say no, and then leave you up to negotiating it. Well, we show you how to negotiate or tell you how to negotiate, or, go in as the secret shopper and ask the questions. which I did for somebody not too long ago, when she had two different contracts to look at. Both were over 85 pages long. And if you read through it, they had some paragraphs that negated the ones in the front and then restated them in the back, and then didn't give you all the full details of the financials.
That's scary. That's really scary. And you maybe joke about aging celebrities, because all I remember is seeing, here in the UK, and anyone who's seen these will know what I'm talking about, the insert company name here, guaranteed over 50s life plan, advertised by aging celebrity who you know from TV. So it might be someone like, Dora, hang on. For the Herd, from Last of Us Summer Wine for our British listeners, or, maybe someone like William Shatner for our American. You will.
That's right. I want to go get. I want to be beamed up, Scotty.
I mean, he advertised computers back in the 80s. He was Commodore's spokesman for the VIC 20 and the Commodore 64.
Oh my gosh, I forgot about that one. Yeah.
Oh yeah. But joking aside, and it is difficult. I think there's an old saying, isn't there? If it looks too good to be true, it usually is.
But what's too good to be true?
Oh.
So, so your version of what looks too good to be true might be different than mine. And that becomes something of concern too. In this contract that I was talking about, the individual who I had given some advice to, she said, well, my rich friends' attorneys and accountants have looked over everything, and since they're there and got approved by them, I figured it'd be fine by me. But they're a different situation, and like I said, the attorneys don't necessarily say, this is how you can afford this.
No, but again, and your circumstances will be different, and it's things like hidden charges. Look, when we were looking at the care home for Nana, we had a friend who worked it. Now, again, different sort of scenario because of our regulation, but he was a care home manager, and he looked at all of the care quality standard reports for all of those care homes. And he said, okay, based on my experience, the report says this is what's actually going on. He looked at all the costs, everything like that, and said, yeah, this is the one we want to go for. And, it does help to have people like, for example, yourself. You've got experience of what to look out for in a care facility contract. And, we're fancy names, because I think I always think of like Springfield Retirement Castle. Sounds very grand, doesn't it, from The Simpsons?
I went to live in a castle too, minus the ghost. But you talked about the rules and regulations and how homes work over in the UK being different than the US, which is true. But we've also had friends in the UK. One very close family friend who had Lewy body dementia was put into a state, I'll call it care home, because his wife was also ill and couldn't take care of him. And he had black eyes and was being physically abused. And the blame was being put on another resident because he was combative. Well, Lewy body dementia has sometimes the anger, yet when he was with his family, that was not there. So part of it was the environment. It turned out it wasn't another resident or patient. It was a care facility worker.
Yeah.
And then getting the reports that they needed was, and the care team to talk about these issues was very, I'll say, very British and very polite and very proper. I'm like, you know what? If it was me, I'd be knocking on that Queen's door and say, what the hell, Queenie? Elizabeth, who's alive at the time, is like, something's wrong in Kansas and it's not here in the States.
Do you know what I can see?
Maybe something's wrong in Yorkshire.
Oh, very good. Very good. Right? I'm impressed. Yeah, I'm impressed.
We're not in London anymore. 3 times.
Oh, wow. Okay. And on that rather scary vision of Queen Elizabeth II in ruby-led slippers.
I'm sure she had them somewhere. She had everything that matched outfits. It was always beautifully coiffed.
Well, you know why she had to, random, you know why she was always so brightly colored? So she could be seen.
That's what I understand, So if I don't want to be seen, I'll dress in drab.
Exactly. There you go. So let's talk about everyone's favorite topic, scammers. Because as it happens, we were streaming last night and I just went into our email because I'm waiting for some emails to come through. I went into our junk mail and there was your order renewal. And it was from Geek Squad.
Oh, I've gotten like several of those, all from Gmails.
Oh, yeah. Right? And it says, your order's been renewed at something like, it's a ridiculous amount, but it's like this one was $350. Okay. Well, first of all, I know why it came through in dollars because it's a US email address for this particular account. And, they're saying, if you want to cancel this, call this number. Now, of course, what happens is it is fake. What they will do is they'll say, we're going to process a refund for you. We're going to transfer the funds to your bank account. And then they'll do some scammy stuff where they try to make you believe that they have put too much money into your bank account and you need to refund them. And they do that through gift cards. It was
so good for me. Sorry for you.
Right?
Guess what?
Tech savvy users like me and you will know. No, I've not placed an order for antivirus. I haven't done that. We'll know, and we'll know what to look out for. But that isn't always going to be the case on your less tech savvy users. And I hate to generalize, but maybe the more elderly users. Now, before we go into this, is just a very quick thought. The generation that are now what we would consider older tech users, could they well be one of the last generations that are going to be less tech savvy?
No, I don't think so. And this is my comment because the younger, like Gen Zs and even the millennials, somebody was referring to herself the other day as a geriatric millennial, meaning that she didn't grow up with a phone in her face the old time and she remembered microwave popcorn being released and some other things. But it was not so much the fact that she hadn't grown up with technology. I think the fact that even the younger generation, because they're using it all the time, become technologically lazy, is what I would say, right?
Interesting, yeah.
So there's a difference between tech savvy and being tech lazy because it's there all the time and it's just a matter of course. So and this is a blanket statement. I think that they in general can become more trusting because it's just part of their everyday lives, as opposed to understanding or even questioning where these things are coming from. You trust marketers, and that, I'm not saying every marketer is bad because I'm one too. I grew up in the marketing world and we all are in some way, shape or form, no matter whether you're in a marketing or sales environment or not. But there's got to be a good, healthy ability to question, not always in a contentious way, but just to say, do I really need that? Is that something important? Do I know where it's coming from? And why is it being targeted to me?
That's a really good point. Yeah, it's not knowing how to use your smartphone doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be aware of what to look out for. And I think it is, there's not enough good education out there. And when I say education, I don't just mean in school, I mean in general. It's something that I'm really passionate about. And I'm actually, genuinely looking to see if it's something I can make as an online resource, sort of help people with that. But that aside, those scammers, do you think, I think we've kind of hit the nail on the head. It's really about, okay, was they expecting this email? What are the telltale signs that it's wrong? I mean, I don't know if you've had them, but the bank emails, which are so badly spelt.
Oh, I actually just got one the other day and it wasn't an email. It was a text message.
Oh.
So this was interesting. It said that my purchase had been declined and all I needed to do was call this number.
Okay.
Well, I didn't recognize the last four digits on the card.
Right.
And it was my bank. And it was an account that I had that I had with my parents just to, manage bills. And so their names were on the account too. And what happened is I said, I am not calling that number. I picked up the phone. I called the bank number on the back of my own card because it was a debit card that they had said that they were trying to use, which on top of it made it even more suspicious. And I called them and I said, I've got this text message. and I'm concerned that it might be fraudulent. And they said, well, that's strange because we don't see anything on your account, because I was calling off my card, and it was on a card that I had gotten from my mother who had passed. So, I didn't have that card anymore. And they said, well, recognize that it's with your mom's card, but we know her as deceased, and therefore we declined it. But yes, that's something that you never should have called that number on, which I didn't.
That's a really good tip.
So it's coming through in text messages too. And it's, everywhere we're being hit. It's not just email. It's not just the phone. It's not just, an internet post that pops up, a pop-up or anything else. It's everywhere.
It is. And, a big one over here, and I don't know if this has hit the US yet, delivery scams, where you'll get a message from a courier, claiming to be a courier saying, hey, we've got a parcel for you. But
yep, I've got those too.
Yeah. There's like so much to pay. I mean, it takes you to a site. Folks, your courier will never do that. If there is a fee to pay, you will get something through your door to say there is a fee to pay, and it will be an official thing. You're not going to get that via a text message.
Don't click. Whatever it is, do not click on the hyperlink. And if it's a text message, call your local delivery office and ask them. Or if it's the bank, don't call the number that's on your phone. Call the number on the back of your card.
Yep.
Or go down to your branch and talk to them, as much as you may have to wait in line. But, whatever it is, use old-fashioned, non-tech, traditional methods to verify, is this actually correct?
Couldn't agree more. That's a great tip.
And mouse over, if you can, on emails. Where is it coming from? Check the emails. I mean, this is, we get these all the time, and they're getting slick. I got caught once a number of years back with QuickBooks, and I was having problems with QuickBooks, and they do, I'll call it fake pages, right? Mm-hmm. So I clicked in, I was looking for the QuickBooks account, the web address. I found it, clicked on it, and called the number saying I was having some problems. And it was a fake website for QuickBooks. And then I finally got a hold of them. I got these guys online. They were helping me with the tech. They were on my computer. I'm like, holy, blah, blah, blah. It was, luckily I was safe, but I ended up, paying, which I shouldn't have had to, for some people to take care of my tech issue with QuickBooks if I needed it. But, shame on me. I would say that's probably about 9 years ago when they were getting slick. So they even do fake websites out there.
And because buying a domain, that's one thing. Check the domain. If you use a password manager, and password managers is a whole different topic. I'm not going to go into it too much, but if you use a good password manager like 1Password or Bitwarden, they will.
Yeah, I use KeyPass.
KeyPass is pretty cool. Their browser extensions are designed to check the web page that you're on, and they shouldn't let you fill your bank's login if you're not on your bank's website.
No, I don't let them fill in. I don't let them autofill my address at all. If at all, but sometimes you have no choice. It automatically does it. So, but I don't do that. No bank, no nothing. And do two-step authentication. Some of them are doing 3-step now.
And really, what we want is the whole concept of passwordless. What Apple are doing in passkeys, Google are on board. The concept of how you authenticate with your device, authenticate with your fingerprint on your phone is so much better than passwords. That's a whole different episode. Let's go back into sort of the concept of tech for older people, because one of the things we talked about. Sometimes, look, there's loads of awesome things that companies are doing to make it more accessible for older people and for family members. Look, I give the example of the Apple Watch, where Apple are now on their cellular Apple Watches, letting you do it a family setup. I wish we'd had that for my granddad, because we would have been able to call him. He might not be able to hear us, but we could have called him, texted him, and it's some cases better. But actually, I think something you said is, sometimes it's the cheapest and the most unlikely techs that can help out in certain situations. Can you go through some sort of, I guess, maybe the best way is like eldercare home hacks, like little things that aren't as obvious maybe?
This is a lot of fun. So when I took, actually just before I took over as POA for my folks and started to see issues, I would go, we have Home Depot and Lowe's. I don't know if you have them over there.
But we don't know, but I know the sort of the home stores, like
the home store. It's basically the big box hardware stores.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. So I would go in there, and instead of going in there to do repairs for our house, I would think, oh my God, look at all these things that can be like used for mom and dad. And I never even thought about it this way, which was kind of interesting. Or Harbor Freight is another, I call it the toy box for guys here in the States. But, low cost.
Timber Toolman Taylor.
Yeah, low cost tools, not toys, but tools for purchase. And so one of the things that I got there, I think it was like $20 or $25, were these little, I'll call them electric eye trip monitors. So you go through, you put it on the ground and you walk past it and it beeps. It makes a loud beep noise. It notices that somebody is going through or tripping this electric eye beam. And what we did is we bought those and put them at the foot of my parents' bed or by the bed where they would normally take their feet out of the bed to stand up and go walk. My mom had dementia. So, not aggressive, but concerned about her getting out of bed and falling was the main issue when we'd had aides here. And I was happy to have, aides who were staying at night fall asleep. Look, I get it. It's okay. Some people say, no, don't fall asleep. You're awake all the time. But they're human too. And to stay up 24/7, that's just not physically possible. So these alarms were put on the floor by their bed. So when their feet hit the ground, these alarm bells would go off where the aides were sleeping or resting or closing their eyes or whatever it was. And the neighbors probably heard these things. They were so loud. It never woke up my dad. I don't know what he was able to sleep through, but that was very helpful, and all for like $20 or $25.
Yeah, which is incredible.
So it was a fall monitor, I would call it, instead of an Apple Watch or something. People who wander, will escape the houses or do the same thing. So at the front of the door, the first thing I actually got on a monitor like that, it really wasn't a monitor. It was at one of those as seen on TV stores. And it was this little parrot. It was a cheap little parrot that you could stick on a wall, like a budgie parrot. And it sat on a branch. And when you walked by, like an animatronic for Disneyland, it would turn its head and go cheep, 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 cheep. Well, we put it at the front of the door where my parents were living it was really an independent facility where we took them out of the other one because mom was escaping and going down the hall and the aides couldn't find her. Like, where'd she go? It's like, well, shame on you. You weren't doing your job. But that little bird would cheep every time she went out the door and they could hear it before we got the $20. So I think I got this for $9.99, but I thought, well, it's kind of cute and entertaining at the same time, right? And mom wouldn't worry about it. She wouldn't know what it was, but we did. So.
And it's great little things like that, and things like little gadgets, little home assistant things.
It's low tech. It's not fancy, but it works, right?
It's not smart tech because it's, it is literally just, audio alerts. You don't need to worry about an internet connection because, certainly I can speak for my grandparents. My grandparents never had an internet connection.
Right.
My grandparents had an analog phone line and that was it. The only time we ever got internet was when I turned up with my portable 4G hotspot.
Yeah, and there's a benefit to having an analog telephone. Mm-hmm. So when the internet goes down, you have no telephone. Yeah, we had two lines at our house in Connecticut. One was the digital line, the VoIP line, and the other was the analog line because we were constantly being hit with power outages that could last for days. When that happened, I knew that I could still call out and call my parents and make sure that they were okay if they needed. And if my power ran out on my phone, we couldn't get a cell connection. At least they had a way to reach me, or if there was an emergency, I could still call out 911.
It's really interesting because here in the UK, the plan is, and I think it's by 2025, our analog phone network is going to get shut down.
Well, there is, I've got the book called How to Survive 911 Medical Emergencies, which is based on the States here, but still a lot of the information could go anywhere worldwide. And there is a way here in the States to call 911 when the 911 system is down.
Oh.
And you just simply text 911. But there's a caveat. You have to make sure that the region where you're living is, I'll call, bought into or linked into the system that coordinates all those calls. So that dial may actually go 50 miles away from you and then try and figure out how to get the service to where you physically are. But that's important to know whether it's available in your area.
It's really interesting, and things like for people who do have, particularly older people, tend to have more, should we say, more decreased vision and decreased hearing.
Yep.
Things like nice big button telephones, or being able to, have audio amplifiers on the telephone, speakers.
60 decibels. Yeah, we had a 60 decibels telephone that worked. You push the button, it boost the sound on it. Mom and Dad could hear it, and you push it again, and it would go down to a normal level, so we could talk to our aides without blasting out their ears.
Yeah. And little things like that. One thing I know we struggle with this with Grandad. It's something I would love to find a really great solution for. Is TV remotes have become so complicated, especially with smart TVs.
Oh yeah.
And whenever my granddad wanted to switch over to his BDV player, that's what my granddad called his Blu-ray player, BDV. He didn't quite understand the difference between a CD and a DVD/Blu-ray. Right. So we would call all his CDs DVDs. And the way he would distinguish it, this one's got pictures on it.
Yep.
Because of diabetes, he started to lose feeling in his fingers. And he couldn't press those smaller buttons. There are products out there that are big button remotes, but they're not great. Have you found anything, just out of interest,
there are a number. I'm looking at one online right now. There's an on-off button that's green.
Okay.
And there's a channel changer that's left and right. They're bright and blue. Mm-hmm. And then there's a volume button up, plus and negative. And that's it. That's all that's on it. Very simple. And it, $39, $40, right? So, and they're universal, but you need to look around and see what's going to work. It may not be the right one that your parents can figure out. It may not work with your system or your cable provider or whatever TV provider. But in that particular case, call the TV company and say, this is what I've got. Can I do this? Will it work? Do you have any other solutions? It is an extra time commitment. It does, waiting online, or, try it. And if it doesn't work, return it to the provider that you bought it from. Buy it on Amazon. You can always return.
Absolutely. Great tip. And, one tip I'd give as well is if you're choosing TVs and accessories, one of the best things you can have so your older relatives don't have to change inputs, get something that supports HDMI CEC, connected equipment control, so that when you turn the Blu-ray player on or, whatever, or the cable box, it will turn the TV on and off.
That's a good one.
It's a really helpful thing to have.
Also the size. I'll just say the size of the television. So my parents had a fairly good sized television, but I could see that Dad was straining to see the closed caption. He wouldn't wear his hearing aids at home, which, and most people don't.
No.
They have the headphones that you can listen to and put on that way. So, and still have a normal conversation with somebody. The only thing I don't like about those is that headphones still create, even though you're sitting next to somebody, a sense of isolation.
They do. Yeah.
So there is that physical component. However, so I went out and bought like this gigantic screen television for my folks, and my dad's, you spend so much money, you shouldn't do that. Oh geez. And then I turned it on and I said, can you read the closed caption on it now? Oh my gosh, this is fantastic. He could see it again.
Brilliant.
They would watch television with the sound off.
Because he could read the closed captions.
I could read it. He didn't care whether Mom could hear it or not. Not what he was thinking. Mom slept. But yeah, he could see it again.
Yeah, because I'm a hearing aid user. And there are times, obviously I'm not wearing them now because I've got in-ear headphones in. But I do wear my hearing aids at home. I try to. But, things you can get are things like HDMI streamers. So you plug the HDMI of your devices into the streamer, and then the HDMI into the TV. And it will transmit to your hearing aids while still leaving the TV audio intact. So very cool bits. By the way, can I just say, I love how far hearing aid technology has come. probably, in fact, actually, very much relevant for older people. My hearing aids directly interface with my phone.
Yeah.
And I can have all my calls routed into my hearing aids. I feel like Lieutenant Uhura in the original
But you
series.
need those big button phones to be able to do that when you get older, right?
You do. So and I think there are, bits of tech, but, things like voice assistants are great. Let's talk a little bit about maybe some of the smart home stuff, because while I don't think an older person would necessarily be able to get along with, like going into a phone and doing other button changes. What do you think to things like Lady in the Tube from Amazon or Apple's implementation? I'm trying not to say the product name so I don't trigger anyone's devices while they're listening. What do you think to those for older people? Are they just not work? In your experience, can older people work with smart assistants in devices like that?
Well, I think it's helpful to some extent. The question I have is, how much do we want to rely on that?
Indeed.
Versus having somebody in the home that actually can help when needed. And they're typically, one way from the speaker to the voice assisted system.
Mm-hmm.
But if we're a caregiver, a POA, a durable power attorney, and, a guardian for somebody and living outside at work or many miles away, that becomes a problem because we don't know when there's an issue. The other thing, too, is that as our parents typically tend to get, older, they also don't want to worry us. Don't worry about me. I'm fine. My husband's dad one day told him about some operation he had. It was a major operation, but it was several months ago. And he said, Dad, why didn't you tell me? He says, oh, I didn't want to worry you. It really wasn't that big of a deal. It's only like a bypass.
Only a bypass. Yeah, only a bypass.
So, but I can't remember what the procedure was, but I don't think it was a bypass. It was something that had gone on. But still, that happens a lot. They're the parents. They don't think of us as the kids. That, we're the kids. We don't need to take over, even though we're there to assist them and be of help. So that's important. In those cases, I say probably the better tool is to have a camera in the house that you can do two-way. So if you see an issue and your phone is alerted, you see, movement and something's, or no lack of movement, you can get on those cameras quite often and say, Dad, I'm here. It's Nance. And they may get confused and not know where you are, but you'll be able to visually see something and then dial 911 yourself or the emergency system and say, I need to, to get an emergency responder to the house of my parents. Here's the address. This is what I'm seeing going on, or a neighbor or whoever it might be. So the camera systems are really very helpful when you got them, and they do connect to your phone too.
Oh no, I think there are some of course, as we will always say on this podcast, make sure you're choosing something that respects your privacy. The last thing you want is the video feed from your parents' house being used by Facebook or Meta as, data analytics and all this stuff. Because, unfortunately, YouFeed, by Anchor recently, right, they were meant to be local recording only. Turns out they were all going to the cloud without anyone knowing about it. So there are concerns there, but the point still stands. And you've got things, I mentioned Apple's offering. One of the things I love is on the HomePod, you've got intercom, so you can actually message through that as well. And, again, I think the trick is, and I think Nancy's hit the nail on the head, not to rely entirely on smart tech, but to use smart tech for your benefit. It might be things like knowing that, my grandparents would sit in the dark until one of them got up.
Right.
Well, smart lighting, if it's done right, because it's actually, you have to think about how you're going to make it so that they effectively don't have to worry about the smart stuff. So things like putting light switch relays into the actual light switches so that it still operates as smart, but they can just flip the switches as normal. But having a schedule that says, okay, at sunset, close the blinds, close the drapes, turn on the lights, things like that.
Yep. That
can be helpful. And you talked about obviously door sensors and alarm systems. They can be incredibly useful if done right. But again, they should I think, correct me if I'm wrong, the point we're trying to make is they should never be in place with someone, a loving carer or someone in a position of responsibility to make sure that person's actually okay.
Absolutely. And to understand that over time, you may have to change out different technologies different tools that you're using. So you talked about the Apple smartwatch. There's other, help I've fallen and I can't get up devices that people will wear around their necks and things like that. No, those are fine until you've got an issue with dementia or some other sense of not liking things around the wrist or around, and I worry about the things that go around the neck because somebody falls and that necklace or whatever device it is could get hung up on something. And now you have a choking device. And I don't think a lot of those manufacturers has ever thought about the what ifs in many cases. Also, like what happens if mom forgets to charge that device? Because guess what? It's like charging your phone. We all forget to charge our phone or we overuse it and it's oops, the next day we need it and the charger's at home and we're out at the grocery store or at work or whatever it is and somebody doesn't have a charger for us. But those things are really important to think about. There's also devices that will, you can set up your home as, I'll call it a smart home, where it'll sense motion. Nothing is on the person at all. But it'll know whether the cabinets where the medicine is opened kept is opened or closed. It'll sense temperature changes in the house. So did they leave the oven on or not? Some of them will have an extra detector for gas or other carbon related concerns. So that's something to be looked at as well, that can be independent, but used in conjunction with something else. They all get expensive though.
They do, and that's the one thing it can be expensive, but, and I think it's, I don't know, again, I can only really speak for the UK, but do reach out to your local adult social care through your council. Not all of them are amazing, because unfortunately our local councils are massively underfunded. But certainly my granddad was able to get an assessment done and was able to get, extra handrails fitted onto the staircase and grab rails fitted on the exterior of the building.
Yeah, low tech, guess what? It works. Or the little stair elevators you sit on a chair. So if you've got 2-story homes or a regular elevator that can be a lift, they're expensive. But guess what? It could add value to the house when you sell it later on if it's done tastefully, so it looks good and aesthetically. Everybody's interested in aesthetics, but guess what? There's an opportunity for another older couple to maybe move into that home who's considering their lifespan and how they want to age in place too, which is what most people want to do.
And you hit the nail on the head in terms of those devices, because my granddad had the wristwatch with the little button. Mm-hmm. That he would press it if he fell, but he did also have a neck pendant, but he never wore it,
right?
Because it kept bashing. He wasn't too worried about it. He didn't mind having things around his neck because he always wore a tie, but he didn't like it bashing, and it would go off because it was overly sensitive. He had a system called Eldercare where there was a box plumbed into the phone line, and it would be like effectively a giant speakerphone.
Right.
And they'd say, "Oh, Ken, Ken, are you okay? You okay? Yeah, fine. Flipping thing knocking again. I brush my teeth. Shut up." Like, that would be my granddad.
Yeah. I'm sure they get all those types of things, but better safe than sorry. And then you also have to think, like, how many times do you, the old adage, how many times do you cry wolf? Mm-hmm. And it really is serious. But, dad has said, "Don't worry about me. I'm fine." And he's on the floor for 3 days.
Yeah. It's not, I shouldn't laugh, but, I do wish granddad had something a little bit more automatic that he would have wore. I mean, my granddad loved watches. The number of watches he had, I do, and I don't. He was 96 when he passed, so I can't really.
It's still hard, right? It's okay. Yeah.
It's and it's one of the reasons I wanted to do this episode is partly because I thought it's such an important thing. But moving on from like actual physical devices, because we've got a lot of great stuff there, and I might need to get you to, we might need to get some links. In fact, I'll try and get some links together. If there's anything you've got, we'll make sure those are in the show notes as well. But one thing I wanted to ask you about is for older people who do like to be online, and we're not talking necessarily here about safety, as in like scams and stuff like that. But one thing I've noticed a lot more of is we are becoming more and more a society where everything is online or through your smartphone.
Right.
There's an example. My church, we're a city centre location. and there's no parking at the actual building. Now, we do have blue badge parking for a limited number of people, but we've done a deal with a local establishment. I'm not going to go into more details because I don't think we're allowed to actually talk about who it is. But they've done a deal on the parking where if you use a certain mobile phone based parking app, you can get, I think it's £1 for 4 hours. Very fair parking. And we've got that basically evenings and weekends for church members.
So you have to pay for church parking where you are?
Well, only because we don't have a parking lot.
Okay, all right, got it.
So
okay.
it's like, so this is a different, like we don't have a parking lot of a building because very few churches do, to be honest with you, because we're so, relatively, these aren't these big, like mega church, not mega churches, but we've got a, quite compact. Anyway, but beside the point. But the only way you can get that is if you have the smartphone app. So for our elderly members of the congregation, they have to pay £1 per hour.
Ooh.
So they get... No, it's not the church's fault. Just to be clear, this is definitely...
But on a limited income stream and, £1 per hour versus £1 for every 4 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And how often you go to church. Some people go to church every day. And that starts to add up.
I mean, in the case of this particular church, maybe a couple of times a week. It depends what activities are on. And again, this isn't the church's fault. This is down to the infrastructure. This is down to, and it is becoming more and more the case now where, public car parks are no longer taking cash payments. You have to use either text messaging or apps.
And some stores are doing the same thing too here in the States. So in New York, before we moved from the New York area, I went into the city and I just needed a bottle of water. I was thirsty and I was between meetings and I just need to get some water. And I didn't have the app on my phone, but it was an Amazon little bodega type of thing.
Oh, yes.
And you go through the turnstile and they said, well, do you have the app on your phone? I was like, what app? He said, well, there's no payment system. You got to pay for it on your Amazon, whatever. And I'm like, oh, the hell with that. I'll just get it on the street someplace else. I'm not going to stand here for 15 minutes and sign up for that just to get a bottle of water. I'm done. But that started to happen. Yeah.
It is. And, now I think things like contactless payments are a wonderful thing because I think there's a balance, cash is wonderful. I had to actually go and get cash out yesterday because my washing machine has decided to turn into a very angry Dalek. And, my washing machine's out of commission. Thankfully, I've got a new one coming next week. Thank you. Thank you very much, landlord.
I like that you call your washing machine darling.
No, Dalek. Not.
Okay. I think you said darling.
Darling. No. I have no romantic relationship with my washing machine. No,
well, I'll fantasize about the washing machine.
No, it turned into a very angry robot, and it was not good. It just made enough noise to. Well, let's just say I could only run it in a day. Anyway, point is I had to do laundry. I had to go and get coins and actually go and get money out of a cash point because my bank don't have branches. That's the other thing is, look, contactless payments, particularly maybe for people with memory issues, not having to remember your PIN and using, your Apple Watch or the card is wonderful. But at the flip side, for most people, my grandparents always paid in cash for everything. It scared me at times, the amount. I remember we went TV shopping. And I was expecting to put it on my debit card and they pay me back. No. My Nana, bless her, brought £600 in a little envelope to Asda. Like, Nana. Like, she said, oh, it's all right. I've had it in my purse for a couple of days. But you've been going out.
What if your wallet got picked? Well, but there are also electronic ways to steal things because of the skimmers that are on systems and everything else. So another tech issue to be concerned about, especially here, they've got the skimmers on the gas stations quite frequently.
Gosh, yeah. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And you don't, you can test to see whether there's potentially a skimmer there. It happened to one of our banks where it was actually on the bank ATM branch that there was a skimmer, and which was rather interesting. They caught the people who had put it in, but still that's an issue that we don't consider. And I think there's a benefit to cash, or at least understanding how to work in a cash system, because people tend to know what they had.
Yes.
Today, it's a lot less so, now I'm sounding like, that younger generation, all they do is play with plastic. Well, I'm there too. So, but there is there is that. I mean, I remember a bank, a piggy bank and counting coins, right?
No, I got my pocket money or allowance in cash.
Yeah.
So I do remember that, and I love cash. I love coins, but I also love just be able to go. I went shopping early and just be able to tap my watch. Go, here you go, and just like on my reader. Interestingly, fun fact for
I'm going to interrupt you a second because my big bank here in the U.S. said don't sign up for one of those Venmo. Don't do it. It's not safe.
That's interesting. Okay, Venmo can be unsafe if it's used wrongly, but that's a really. I'm talking about Apple Pay because Apple Pay. So here in the UK, Apple Pay is because our infrastructure has been built around contactless.
Right.
Apple Pay is automatically supported. I was talking to Jay, my partner and the co-host of this show when she's not working, and she was saying their store, and I won't name a store, but it begins with a K and ends in an R. They don't take any contactless payment beyond their own app. That doesn't happen here. If a store supports contactless, it supports Apple or Google Pay. But I just love to be able to tap on a payment terminal. But that's the other thing is, of course, today I went shopping. 2 whole checkout lanes, at least at this store, have gone in favor of self-checkouts. And
we have that here too.
I don't know about you, but I'm seeing that more and more now. I mean, there's this whole controversy going on at Walmart with the receipt checkers. You've been your own cashier, and now you have to show your receipt. I mean, that's a whole thing, but. Right. Do you think do you think self-service machines where we're asking people who maybe have vision or vision problems in particular, I'm thinking, or, even dexterity issues, to do all their own checkout, do you think that's detrimental?
I'm not sure it's detrimental because we've got people here to help as well. It's not 100%. I mean, if you need, there's always like one person there. But it is frustrating. I mean, we've all been through them. I've used them. And when you have a glitch or you have to weigh something and there's no sticker on it to tell you what the number is.
Or if you buy an alcohol.
Right. Or the number sticker on the Apple is so tiny that even I can't read it with or without glasses. And what do you, or the scanner's not working. So somebody's got to come and check it out. And it extends the amount of time there. So I find that frustrating. I'm much rather said, look, I am not a checkout expert. You're the checkout expert. You do your job. Voila, we're out of here. I can stand online and read a magazine versus whatever. I think that's an issue of customer service and customer satisfaction. Do people want to control that? Or now they get the scanners where while you're in the store as you're shopping, you can scan what it is through there either on your phone or through a scanner at the front of the store. And so you just walk out with your stuff. You don't even have to pay for it. It's paid for as you scan it into your cart as you're shopping throughout the store. Which is okay too, providing somebody doesn't pick up my scanner and put it in their cart. I mean, there's another potential fraud, and I think it's easier for shrinkage to happen. Although, Walmart and others say they've got cameras at the checkout, the self-checkout, so they'll be able to see how many items you have and whether you walked out with it. People unintentionally may not scan something because they think they have, and now they're stopped. And so their sense of dignity and respect is gone. Then you've got others who are purposely doing it. We've seen people purposely trying to return things that, there are more and more of those people happening, coming forward as the economy gets tighter. Like, what can I get away with? So that's a business matter. And who's the customer?
That's a very good point. Look, ultimately, and that's one point of frustration. Now, one thing that I've seen a lot of, again, as someone with visual impairment, can I put a plea out to websites who, particularly if you're providing a public service or anything that people need to interact with, please make sure you've invested in accessibility, because you know what? Don't make it difficult for people to zoom in on your site or increase the font size, because you will have people. Look, I have to zoom in on sites.
Right.
Please make it easier. I mean, again, it's little things like that and choice of, user experience, what we call user experience and user interaction, so important. Not confusing people with lots of button choices. I mean, we talked about big button phones. This push to smartphones I know the number of calls I get from members of the church or just, older friends. I have no idea. They'll say, I have no idea what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to text my nephew or something like that. And they can't figure it out because the UI is so confusing.
Right? Yeah.
Again, what's your take on that?
In those particular cases, I think we need to first of all, we need to understand who our customer is, right? There's a marketing issue. And more people have different types of abilities. I'll call them abilities versus disabilities, because some people have certain abilities that are different than others. So I like to say that versus dis. Right?
I like that. Yeah, I like that.
We're not dissing that. But I'm in the process of building a new website for Caremanity, which is the over umbrella of our business, or building one. And you was like, reminding me, it's like, oh yeah, I got to add that app in there to make sure that it's accessible from a readability perspective. Then there's the audible perspective. If it's a written word, can it be read? It depends upon what other tools you have on your end. And then from the podcast side of things, I've got a podcast. I don't translate everything. I translated one, or did a transcript for one that was specifically with a gentleman. We were talking about disability in the healthcare environment and what issues are going on. But the transcript tool that I had took 4 hours to correctly edit it on our side. So that's what can those of us who are creators and developers and service providers afford to do time-wise is the other question. Not that we don't want to serve people, but I don't have another 4 hours in the day for every particular show that I've done to do that.
No, I mean, we're struggling with that, but you'll notice, folks, that from the episode Make Community and Warcraft, there should start to be transcriptions. Jay's taking responsibility for that. We're using Descript to do ours. Now, there are so many tools, but our hosting provider for the podcast, Castos, who we are an affiliate with Castos, and they are wonderful for actual podcast hosting. They have automatic transcriptions, but it's as in they will process the episode for us. But again, we'd have to correct it.
Yeah, they're piss poor is the only way to describe it.
Oh, what, the automatic stuff? Yeah, it's not
the automatic stuff. I mean, I was using a brand name that a lot of podcasters use, and we just tested and said, "Oh, this is horrific."
But there are so many out there, but look, they're not perfect. You do have to go manual, and it costs money. So again, from a Crosswire's perspective, it's not that
if I'm paying for it, I want to be perfect, right?
And it's not that we don't want to do it, but it's not necessarily the cost. It's the time.
Yeah.
It's Jay's time. I'm producing the shows. I'm editing. She's doing social media. Jay's our stream coordinator. There's only two of us, but still, we have different roles to try and put that workload out there. So, and I think there is a difference. I think you've hit a nail there on the head. There's a huge difference between companies being unwilling to be accessible, and I've seen plenty of examples of that, versus budgets and resources.
Yeah, and the bigger companies who aren't doing it, shame on them for not doing it. And some of them may be gouged financially to say, so they're it's the outside pressure, social pressure to do things that are right. But I think they can do things right, probably at a more cost-effective rate because of scale of what they've got. Yet are they willing to invest in it versus those of us that are smaller and medium-sized corporations that it's almost financially impossible for us to do this time and time again and still be able to deliver a product that's of value to somebody that we're proud of.
Absolutely, because we're both content creators, and I know.
Correct.
Look, but we effectively had a production meeting before we did this episode to talk about, what's the style, how we do this. We put a lot of work in. Me and Nancy put a lot of work into getting this episode ready, and I hope that comes across. I mean, I can say straight away, I've loved this discussion. It's been really helpful, but we both believe in quality. It's something that's always driven me crazy, is the lack of care in some sectors. There's always
the lack of care until it becomes a liability,
right? Until you have to do something, why bother? And even then, it's the compliance. You only have to do so much to hit compliance, But actually, we should all be doing more than that. Quality of audio, and it's so much stuff. But again, I think it comes down to just have that thought about accessibility. Think, okay, if my elderly relative was trying to listen to this podcast, can they do so? Or can they access my website? Or is my product easy enough to use? I saw a post earlier, actually, on Mastodon, where someone was trying to complete a jury summons, and the SSL cert had problems. Now, that's a problem. So I'm torn on this one, but I'll tell you that. So the problem is that the SSL cert was invalid, but Apple's UI to say, okay, do you still want to trust this, was confusing. Now, part of me thinks actually that is the right thing because you don't want people trusting bad certificates. But the other part is it too complicated? The real answer here is whatever court system this was, why are your SSL certs not working properly? What's happened there? But anyway, I think there's a lot we can do to make tech accessible, and also just be mindful of how we can use tech to help older people. Does your 80 or 90-year-old grandparent or parent or relative, if they still enjoy CDs rather than like trying to get them onto Apple Music or Spotify, let them have the CDs. It's not going to look. Does it mean that they're going to have a huge... My grandfather, honestly, had enough CDs to open a branch of a music store. He had that many. But that's what he enjoyed. That's what he knew how to use. I think, as a final thought, are there times, Nancy, where I maybe put myself into this category, try and make technology too complicated for older people because we think it's a good idea? I know I throw myself into that boat. I've done that with my parents.
So, are we making technology too difficult for older people?
More so, so when we come up with all these clever ideas of like, oh, instead of your CD, like, for example, instead of your CD player, Granddad,
right, why
don't we get you this streaming thing?
Okay. Yeah. Because it's cooler, it's cheaper, it's faster, better. It's like, it's the new thing. There's always that first mover person who takes up the new tech, and then there's the fast followers, and then there's the laggers, as they call them, right? So I think what we have to be careful of is looking at technology for technology's sake, and being so wrapped up in the cool, the new, the different, the elimination of bodies, and then ignoring ultimately the end user, the customer, our parents, or even ourselves, because we're the ones who are setting it up, and maybe we don't have the time to do so. Or, I'm reading I've got a piece of technology equipment here that it's like really, people are complaining about setting it up versus podcast related stuff. And I'm like, it's going to take me 4 hours. I already did 4 hours and I still can't figure it out. And it's not working. And others saying it's taking them 4 days. Like, I don't have 4 days. Maybe I should just return the thing, because I know it's going to be a better tool, but heck, it's making, I'm tearing my hair out here just trying to figure out how to get it work with my system. And that's wrong. That's a technology that worked beautifully when it works. The problem is they didn't consider the user interface and uptake on it. And, ultimately it's the old adage, keep it simple, stupid. How do you make it work? Give me one button usage, connection, and then give the updates as I need them, right? It doesn't need to be absolutely 100% perfect unless it's life-threatening for a health or elder care related issue. But if there's a way to make life easier for us who are caring for somebody, still be engaged, give our parents or our loved ones a little sense of autonomy and respect, and, still feel like they're vital in the world, then that has to be the end mode of what we're dealing with. And ultimately, none of us wants to leave this world thinking that we're a burden on anybody. But we want the dignity and respect, even to that very last breath.
Couldn't agree more. That sums up exactly. Yeah, look, remember, there's still a person. I'll be really honest. I know.
Until I become a cyborg. And then then we'll have to do a podcast on that, because I'll be speaking in ones and O's.
I mean, we could do that. Yeah, I know I got frustrated with Granddad. Not I'd like to think I never got frustrated with Grandad to his face. It would always be on the car on the way back with Mum and Dad. Like, oh my gosh, Grandad. Like,
and then you worry about them, right?
Yeah. Like, I hate, one of my biggest frustrations for me is how unaffordable public transport, as in trains and stuff, is, because it costs me over £150 to try and get up and visit my nan at return. It's a lot of money.
Yeah.
When I'm currently not working, so it is difficult. But again, I worry about them, and I tried to have phone calls. Things like FaceTime are wonderful, but sometimes, do you know what? We've just resorted to good old fashioned phone calls because my nana's eyesight isn't good enough now to see me on the screen. She much rather Mum puts her on speakerphone. That's it. It's that simple.
Or those what they have the electronic frames, picture frames.
Oh, they're wonderful.
That you can send photos, which are kind of fun for people because then you can upload and update photos, and they may ignore them. But I got to say, one of the things that even if you're using technology and somebody doesn't use it, that's okay. One of the things that I got from my dad, I signed up as a public television sponsor, and so I could get the whole directory of Rick Steves travel CDs for Dad one year because he loved to travel, and he just physically it wasn't safe for him to get on a plane and go somewhere. I tried to do it at one point and finally we had to cancel because I was worried about Mom, and then God forbid they go on a cruise and man overboard and wheelchair overboard, like not the way I want to end their life and mine. Right. But so I thought this was a way to do it. He loved watching the show, but he wouldn't touch the CDs. Go figure. It's like until I came in and said, okay, we're going to sit down every time I'm there. It was email Mom and snail mail Dad until Mom couldn't see and do the email. But Dad would always write, and Mom,
No, I get that. You adapt to the person's needs. And again, there is a human there, underneath all those tech frustrations or the things.
Yeah. Can I add just one more thing just really quickly before we go? Technology can be used in a variety of different ways. And one of the ways that I use tech was simply using a Word document and creating a newsletter, which I referred to as Letters from Camp, which was my life to my dad and my mom every week. And I would take photos on my phone and I'd transfer them into a Word document and say, look, guys, this is what I'm doing. This is what's going on in this week. Isn't life wonderful? And I want to share what was happening, from pictures of me at Rockefeller Center to walking into a building. I mean, they didn't need to be fancy. The new flowers that were out in springtime in New York City, or, a bluebird that I saw in our backyard up in Connecticut, and just mail those down. So it was a combination of creating the document on a computer. So technology, right? Using the phone to take the photos, technology, transferring it in, and sending it with a non-tech stamp in the mail.
Yeah. Good old fashioned snail mail with post.
And they loved it. They absolutely loved it. So there's a way to blend the two and still create a sense of love and warmth and connection when you're not there.
Absolutely.
It saves your heart and theirs. So tech for tech's sake is not necessarily important. What it is that you're trying to do is critical.
Absolutely. We printed, we found it when we were cleaning up the house. We'd done a photo book for them.
Yeah, right.
They'd probably never looked at it, but they loved it when they got it. My granddad was a very keen photographer, so every time I could show him photos, he had a digital camera. We had digital cameras, but he always wanted was printed photos. So he always used to drive my dad somewhat crazy that after each Christmas that they'd been with us, the trip home had to go past, some way to print photos. And it would usually be going
at the local
down
pharmacy, right?
Local pharmacy, like with little, down here, like Max Spielman or something. And, and they always laughed because they could see that it wasn't like they knew we were there once a year, because Grandad wanted the photos that had been taken for that Christmas. He's like, oh, yeah, I'll have one of them. I'll have one of them.
Or the photo books that you can order online. So now it's a bound book that he can go through versus getting like sticky peanut butter fingers all over your photos.
Absolutely, yeah, because the original, oh gosh, yeah, no. The number
or
of times,
they fade over time. right?
They do. And by the way, that's why backups are so important. So, Nancy, thank you so much for joining me. Would you like to tell people where they can check out your content and where they can find you online if they want to follow you anywhere, if you are indeed on any social media?
Yeah, no, I am on social media. On Instagram, it's Caremanity, CareManity, and the number 10. Why 10? Because it's a perfect 10. It's my joke, right?
Love it.
Actually, I created too many accounts. I couldn't figure out how to get rid of the other ones. But so talk about tech. But that's Caremanity. On the podcast, it's Eldercare Success on all the podcasts, or you can just go to eldercaresuccess.live and then go to whichever platform you like to listen to. On Facebook, it's also Caremanity. Or you can go to our Facebook group, which is Eldercare Success. And the only request I have there is you answer the 3 questions that we ask, which is, are you a caregiver? What are the tips that you have for others? And do you agree to be positive in the group and not a spammer? And if you agree, great, you're in. If you don't, no soup for you.
Yeah.
No. And then Nancy May on Facebook. I'm there and around too. So you're welcome to join me. And I hope to see you or hear you on the podcast, eldercaresuccess.live.
Awesome. Nancy, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. Folks, we will roll the outro. Thanks for listening to this episode of Crosswires. We hope you've enjoyed our discussion and we'd love to hear your thoughts. So please drop us a note over to podcast@crosswires.net.
You can also drop us a comment on the post, or if you're a GoodPod user, why not start a discussion there too?
You can also join our new Discord server at crosswires.net/Discord. We've got forum channels for each episode and we'd love you to join the discussion there.
You can also follow us on Mastodon at crosswires@mastodon.social.
And of course, you can find the show in all the good podcast apps and all the really bad ones too.
More of our content, head on over to crosswires.net/YouTube for all our videos, and keep an eye on our Twitch channel at crosswires.net/live for our upcoming streams.
If you like what you heard, please do drop a review in your podcast directory of choice. It really does help spread the word about the show.
And of course, if you can spare even the smallest amount of financial support, we'd be incredibly grateful. And you can support us at ko-fi.com/crosswires. That is ko-fi.com/crosswires.
Until next time, thanks for listening.
Do you want to change the world? So do I. On this podcast, we meet artists whose work is doing just that. Welcome to Art Heals All Wounds. I'm your host, Pam Uzel. Each week, I interview an artist and talk about their work. As creative thinkers, artists present us with some of the most compelling visions of ways that our world could work better for everyone. Art around environmental, social, and racial justice, gender equity, ways to build community and bridge divisions, and solace for grieving. If we can see solutions to the things that prevent us from thriving as individuals and societies, we can imagine implementing those solutions. Once we imagine that, we can become the people we want to be, belonging to communities that nurture everyone, and living in societies based on equity and justice. How do we change the world? One artist at a time.